windy morning, with waves tapping gently against the sand and the ocean breeze blowing hard enough to lift the towel in her hand, Talia suddenly heard a voice behind her. It was a man's voice, tight and strained, like someone trying to hold on to his last bit of strength in a day that felt too heavy. "I don't know what reason I have to keep trying anymore." The words stopped her cold. Her hand tightened around the cleaning cloth until her knuckles turned white. That was definitely not something a normal tourist would say. And in that moment, Talia felt something was very wrong. A seaside resort almost always greeted the sunrise in its own quiet way. Not too loud, not too crowded, just white rooms, soft yellow sunlight, and a breeze carrying the faint smell of salt along the long hallways. This was where Talia worked every day. A young, beautiful cleaning lady who lived much more simply than most people her age. She didn't complain, didn't blame anything, and always tried to find something positive in the smallest moments, even though life had tested her more than once. Every morning, Talia's routine flowed as steadily as the waves. She started with the rooms closest to the shore, where guests often left damp, sand-covered towels and sometimes a few empty juice cans on the steps. Talia picked up each towel, folded it neatly, and placed it in her basket. She wiped the glass doors so the sunlight could pour into the rooms and brighten them. Then she walked down the hallway, cleaning the handrail with a cotton cloth that smelled softly of soap. Talia had the kind of sweetness that made people feel like they wanted to talk to her. But what made her truly special was her instinct. She always noticed when someone wasn't okay. Red eyes, a held-back sigh, a tired step. She caught all of it. Maybe it was because she had been through enough to know what it felt like to hide your sadness from the world. At the resort, Talia saw every type of guest. Young families laughing while their kids ran around. Couples arguing softly but trying to act normal in front of others. Business travelers glued to their phones, too busy to look at the ocean, even though it was right there. And the quiet ones who came here just to escape everything outside. But that morning felt a little different. Talia was bent over, wiping the handrail along the second-floor hallway, when she noticed a man standing ahead of her, staring out at the sea like he was searching for something he wasn't even sure existed. He wore a slightly wrinkled gray hoodie, old jeans, and sneakers with scuff marks. He didn't look like the kind of tourist with money to burn, but he didn't look like someone dangerous either. He just seemed ordinary, quiet, and a bit tired. Talia gave him a small smile, the kind she offered to every guest here. Not too warm, not too distant, just enough to make someone feel welcome. He nodded back, but his eyes drifted somewhere far away. So far that it left a strange emptiness settling in her chest. It was the look of someone trying to stay standing with whatever strength they had left. A simple thought crossed her mind. Maybe he was a guest waiting to check in or meeting someone. Nothing unusual, just a man looking at the ocean in the morning. But when Talia turned away and took a few steps, the voice behind her stopped her in an instant. A man's voice, tight and shaky, the kind you recognize immediately if you've ever known what a hard hit in life feels like. "No, I'm not okay. I don't know how much longer I can keep going." Talia froze, her feet glued to the floor. She wasn't trying to listen in, but the hallway was too quiet. The distance was too close, and his words were far too heavy. She turned her head slowly, breathing lightly as if even her breath might make him notice she was nearby. Sunlight hit the glass and cast a pale glow across Jordan's back, but none of that light seemed to reach his face. He stood there with one hand on the railing, the other holding his phone, shaking. Talia caught only a few broken sentences, but they were enough to send a chill down her spine. Those words felt like a blade cutting open memories she had buried deep. The feeling of being lost. The feeling that the whole world has turned its back on you. The feeling of wanting to disappear from everything. She had once stood in that exact place, and because of that, she understood. Talia tightened her grip on the cloth and took a long breath to steady herself. Something inside her whispered that this quiet morning was about to turn in a very different direction. Something deep. And something that would matter a lot to someone. She didn't know if she should step in, but her heart wouldn't let her walk away. Everything started in that moment. Talia stayed still for a long moment after hearing Jordan's strained voice, but she told herself she needed to get back to work. She forced herself to walk, to focus on the usual tasks like picking up a piece of paper someone left behind or fixing the doormat in front of a room. But when she passed the corner of the hallway leading to the stairwell, his voice came again. Clearer this time, because he was only a few steps away. Talia recognized that tone instantly. It was tired, slightly shaky, the kind of voice someone uses when they are fighting hard not to fall apart. She didn't look at him. She just stood there with the cloth in her hand, her heart pounding as she listened to him speak into the phone. I don't know what reason I have to keep trying anymore. Talia stopped as if someone had grabbed her by the shoulder. That wasn't the kind of complaint people made when they were tired, nor was it a joke from someone having a bad day. It was heavier than that. Deeper. Honest in a way that scared you. I feel like I don't belong anywhere. Everything in my life collapsed at the same time. Those 3 sentences hit Talia straight in the chest, not because she knew Jordan, and not because she was curious, but because a few years earlier she had said those exact words on a night so desperate she wished she could erase it from her memory. She leaned lightly against the wall, her hand tightened around the cloth until the folds pressed into her skin. She hadn't meant to listen, but the hallway was too quiet, and his voice carried a kind of pain no one could hide. Jordan kept talking, his voice lower this time, but still clear enough for her to hear every word. She moved out, didn't say much, just left a note saying we were both tired. I get it, but it still hurts. Years together, and this is how it ends. I lost my job too. They cut staff and I was the first one out. A long silence followed. Talia heard him sigh, a sigh so heavy it made her palms sweat. You know what? I feel like life is messing with me. Every time I think I'm standing a little steadier, something comes along and knocks me down again. She closed her eyes, partly because she didn't want to hear more, and partly because she was afraid she couldn't handle hearing anything else. She had stood in that exact place before, wondering why bad things kept piling up, wondering if she was the problem, wondering if there was anything left worth trying for. Talia opened her eyes and looked at Jordan from a distance. He didn't look like someone who had completely fallen apart, but he didn't look okay either. There was something in the way he stood, in the slight drop of his shoulders, that showed he was so worn down that one more small hit might break him. She swallowed hard. What was a cleaning lady supposed to be in a moment like this? Just someone who tidied up, a stranger, someone with no place in his life. If she walked over, would he think she was intruding on something private, or feel watched, pitied? Talia was so unsure she had to brace one hand against the wall. She wondered, do I even have the right to do anything? Should I leave him alone? Or if I keep walking, would that mean I'm abandoning someone at the moment they need it most? Her chest tightened when Jordan said one more thing, almost a whisper. I'm really tired. The kind of tired where you don't know what to do, don't know what you want, don't even know where to start anymore. Just from that, Talia knew he was standing far too close to a line no one should ever be near. She bit her lip and forced herself to stay calm. She recognized that feeling so clearly, the kind of loneliness no one notices, the feeling of sinking slowly while the whole world thinks you're still swimming. Then the old memories came rushing back. Back then, she sat in her car for hours. No crying, no talking, just staring blankly through the window. Everything in her life had collapsed at the same time. And in the exact moment she thought no one needed her anymore, an older woman tapped gently on the car window and asked, "Are you okay?" One simple question, but it pulled her back from feeling like she had been abandoned. When she finally stepped out of that dark place, Talia promised herself that if she ever met someone in the same state, she wouldn't turn away. And now, standing right in front of her, was someone just like that. Talia took a deep breath. She stood there for a long time, long enough for the battle inside her to drag her back and forth between stepping in and staying away. But then, her heart made the choice for her. She couldn't leave him. She couldn't walk away like she hadn't heard anything. She couldn't pretend he was fine when he clearly wasn't. Talia straightened her uniform and wiped her hands quickly to make herself look as calm as she could. She took one step, then another. She knew what she was about to do might not change his entire life, but it might be exactly what he needed on this windy morning. And Talia refused to let herself walk past that moment. She slowed her steps, picking up right where she had decided she couldn't stay still any longer. She didn't want to startle Jordan, so she kept a gentle distance, close enough for him to hear her clearly but not so close that he would feel invaded. She took a small breath before speaking, trying to keep her voice calm and natural. "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help?" Jordan spun around instantly. Clearly, he hadn't expected anyone else to be in the hallway, let alone someone who had heard the whole conversation on the phone. He took a small step back, his shoulders tensing like he was trying to pull his pain back inside before anyone could see it. His eyes met hers. At first, there was only shock and confusion. But then something in Talia's warm expression made him loosen up. There was no nosy curiosity, no judgment, just the right kind of concern from someone who knew something wasn't right. "I'm sorry," Jordan stammered. "I didn't think anyone heard." Talia shook her head softly. "It's okay. I just thought, sometimes someone just needs a person who's willing to listen." Her words hit the exact place he had been trying to protect. Jordan looked down, his lips pressed tight as he tried to hold himself together. Eventually, he sat on the long bench by the wall, where a soft beam of sunlight rested on his shoulder. His breathing was long and heavy, like even sitting down had taken whatever strength he had left. Talia kept a respectful distance, angling herself slightly so he wouldn't feel stared at. She didn't add anything else, leaving space for him to speak if he wanted to. After a moment, Jordan finally said, "I feel like I failed in my marriage and in my job." His voice was flat but shaky, as if every sentence pulled another weight out of his chest. "My wife left last week. No big fight or anything. Just, she said we're not who we used to be." He let out a small, bitter laugh, the kind people make when they can't find anything to smile about. "And then the company cut staff. My name was on the list, so I lost both things in the same week." Talia didn't interrupt. She only gave a small nod to show she was truly listening. Jordan went on. "My family lives far. I'm not close to them anyway. Last night when I got home to that empty house, I couldn't take it. I drove for hours to get here. Anywhere was fine, as long as it wasn't that house." She understood that feeling better than anyone, but she didn't let herself talk about her own past. This moment belonged to him. When his silence stretched on, Talia moved a little closer and sat at the opposite end of the bench, still keeping enough space so he wouldn't feel cornered. "I won't pretend I understand everything you're going through," she said, her voice as soft as the ocean breeze. "But I know one thing. Everyone hits the bottom emotionally at some point. It doesn't mean you stay there." Jordan looked up at her, not with anger or pain, but with the expression of someone who thought he was sinking and suddenly saw a hand reaching down. Talia continued, "Sometimes life takes too much at once and makes you think you have nothing left. But your worth doesn't disappear just because a few things in your life fell apart. It's still there. You're just too worn out to see it right now." Jordan leaned back against the wall and let out another sigh, but this one was lighter. "No one's ever said that to me." "I think you needed to hear it," she replied, "and you deserve to hear it." A peaceful quiet settled between them, no longer as heavy as before. Jordan looked toward the sand in the distance, where a few towels left by guests were fluttering in the wind. "It's been days," he admitted, "that I've felt invisible." Talia tilted her head. "You're not invisible, not today." His eyes lowered, but in a relieved way, like he had finally set down something heavy he'd been carrying alone for too long. He took a deep breath, clearing his voice with a long exhale, then said something that made Talia freeze for a moment. "Thank you. I never thought a stranger would be this kind to me." Talia didn't answer right away. She just looked at him with the most genuine expression she had. No questions, no digging, no pressure. Just letting him know she truly heard him, saw him, and understood at least a part of the pain he was carrying. And in that moment, Jordan no longer felt like he was standing at the edge. He felt like someone was standing beside him, close enough that he no longer felt like he was falling. When Jordan left the hallway, walking slowly but lighter than when he arrived, Talia stayed on the bench where he had just been. She set the cloth beside her, laced her fingers together, and let herself take a long breath. The conversation had taken more energy from her than she expected, not in a draining way, but in the way old memories suddenly wake up and brush against the deepest part of your heart. Everything Jordan said lingered in her mind. The feeling of failure, the loneliness, the pain of being left behind in a place you once called home. Talia didn't understand those things because she studied psychology or because she had heard many sad stories. She understood because she had walked through that dark place on her own shaky legs. She leaned back slightly, eyes fixed on the quiet hallway in front of her, and her past slowly opened up. Not loud, not violent, just quietly slipping back into her memory. There was a time when Talia lived in a marriage where every day felt like trying to keep a cracked cup from breaking further. Her ex-husband wasn't a bad person, but he dismissed her job so often it became a wound. Every time she came home in her slightly dusty uniform, he had a way of talking that made her feel not good enough. "You're just a cleaning lady. Why are you stressed?" Or worse, "If you had a better job, maybe we wouldn't be struggling like this." Small comments, but repeated enough times, they became something that tightened around her self-worth. Talia slowly pulled back, talked less, and tried to do everything perfectly the way he wanted, just to avoid another remark. But silence that lasts too long always leaves a mark. When their marriage ended, it didn't explode with fights or tears. It just went out, like a light neither of them had a reason to turn back on. The day she signed the divorce papers, Talia walked out to the parking lot feeling like every ounce of strength had drained out of her. She sat in her car, rested her forehead on the steering wheel, and let time pass. 1 hour. 2 hours. She didn't remember exactly how long. She only remembered not knowing which scared her more. Going back to an empty apartment or stepping into a future where nothing felt certain. In the nights that followed, she drove aimlessly. Some nights she parked at a supermarket, sitting in the dark and listening to the engine cool down. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. No one knew anything. But inside, she felt herself disappearing. Until one evening, while she sat in the car staring through the windshield without really seeing anything, there was a soft knock on the window. She jumped a little and turned to look. An older woman with a gentle face was standing there. She asked a very simple question. "Are you okay?" Just those 3 words, but they felt like someone had flipped a switch in a dark room. Not because the woman solved her problems, not because she said anything profound, simply because someone saw her. Someone who didn't know her, didn't expect anything from her, and cared at exactly the right moment. Talia burst into tears the moment she heard that question. A silent kind of crying, but one that lifted some of the weight sitting on her chest. The woman didn't ask anything else. She just stood beside the car, creating a sense of safety so Talia could breathe again. After that day, Talia was more grateful for that small moment than anything else. It didn't change her life overnight, but it saved her from feeling invisible. And sometimes, that alone is enough to pull someone away from a dangerous decision. She returned to the present as the ocean breeze drifted through the hallway, brushing lightly against her hair. She touched her hand gently, as if reminding herself that she had made it through that chapter. She was no longer the woman sitting in a supermarket parking lot. She had chosen a different path. From that day on, she lived by one clear rule. Always be kind. Always notice people. Always keep her heart open to the world, even when the world wasn't always gentle. Not because she wanted to be a hero or prove anything, simply because she knew exactly how awful it felt to stand on that edge. And if she could gently pull someone back, even just a little, with nothing more than a simple question, she would. By choosing to live that way, her life slowly changed. Not in the sense of becoming wealthy or wildly successful, but in a way that made her feel she had real worth. Every workday, every smile she offered a guest, every greeting, every small action made her feel connected to the world in a warmer way than before. And that was why, when she heard what Jordan said, she couldn't pretend she didn't understand. She couldn't walk away as if she didn't know how terrifying that feeling could be. Talia sat for a little longer, looking toward the ocean. She knew what she did for Jordan was just a tiny thing, a conversation, a moment of listening, but deep down she believed it was the right thing. What she didn't know was that this small moment would someday lead to something much bigger. For now, she simply sat still, letting her heart settle before continuing the long workday ahead of her. That afternoon, when the sunlight softened and the ocean breeze started to turn chilly, Talia was gathering the last few towels left in the lobby area. She bent down to pick up a sand-covered towel when she heard footsteps she somehow recognized. Not hurried steps, but slow and deliberate ones, like someone looking for a specific person. When she looked up, Jordan was standing right in front of her. He looked completely different from that morning. Not stronger, not glowing, but lighter, as if someone had just lifted a weight off his shoulders. His eyes were clearer, his posture less slumped, and his expression no longer carried that overwhelming exhaustion. Still sad, but with hope. The kind of hope you notice right away. "I was looking for you," Jordan said, his voice still low but steadier. "I wanted to give you this." He held out a small folded note, creased carefully as if every fold meant something. Talia wiped her hands on her uniform and took it. The paper was soft, slightly wrinkled, like he had been holding it the entire way. "I wrote it after talking to you," Jordan continued. "I figured I need to start somewhere." Talia unfolded the note. Inside was a list written in slightly shaky handwriting. Bookmark, find a new job, get the house back in order, see a therapist, call my family, eat and sleep properly, give myself time, stop blaming myself for everything snickth. But what made her stop completely was the line at the top of the list. "Thanks to the cleaning lady who reminded me I still matter." Talia's hand froze, her eyes locked on the simple, honest words that made her chest warm in a way she hadn't expected. A long breath slipped from her lips as if she had been holding it for the entire afternoon. It took Talia a few seconds to speak. "Jordan, I just did what anyone should do." Jordan shook his head right away. "No, not everyone does that." His voice was steady now, nothing like the shaky tone he had that morning. "I've walked past so many people," he said. "They all saw me, but none of them really looked at me. You were the first person who asked if I was okay." Talia set the note down on the nearby table, her hands clasping together as if it helped her stay steady against the emotion rising in her chest. His words weren't fancy or dramatic, but they hit her in the truest way. Jordan took a long breath and went on, each sentence clearer than anything he'd said earlier that day. "After I talked to you, I called my friend back. He was a little shocked I actually wanted to hear him out again. He let out a small, real laugh. I told him I wanted to go home, clean up the place, and start looking for a new job." He paused, then added, "I also booked an appointment with a therapist. I think it's time I let someone help me the right way." Talia smiled, not a big bright smile, but a warm one, deep and genuine. "I'm glad you did." Jordan looked at her for a moment, gratitude clear in his eyes. "You made me see things a little differently. Just a little. But sometimes, that's all it takes." Talia nodded, her voice soft. "I didn't do anything big." "No," Jordan said again, firmer this time. "You helped me stop feeling invisible. And that's already huge." They stood there for a few seconds. The ocean breeze swept through the lobby, lifting the towel in Talia's hand before letting it fall again. The late afternoon light touched Jordan's face, giving him a quiet, steady calm. Jordan bent down to adjust his shoelace, then looked up at her once more. "I should go. I want to get home while there's still daylight so I can clean up the place." Talia nodded gently. "Good luck." Jordan smiled, small but sincere. He turned and walked toward the lobby doors. But before stepping off the last step, he paused and looked back at Talia one more time. That look wasn't a goodbye, and it wasn't another thank you. It was the look of someone holding on to a moment that shifted their life in a way they never saw coming. He walked away, his figure growing smaller under the fading light of the afternoon. Talia stayed still, her fingers brushing the note he left behind. It wasn't loud happiness, it wasn't pride. It was a quiet warmth spreading from her chest through her whole body. A peaceful kind of joy, knowing that on a day that seemed ordinary, she had helped someone avoid a day that could have been much worse. And that alone made her afternoon more beautiful than the sunset outside. After Jordan left, Talia returned to her usual tasks, with hands still warm from holding his note. She gathered towels, wiped down tables, straightened a few chairs that had been pushed out of place. Everything looked the same as it had that morning. The wind, the waves, the calm air of the seaside resort. But inside Talia, something felt lighter, brighter. She noticed her mood was different from any other day. Not the kind of happiness that made you jump around. More like a gentle peace, the feeling you get when someone opens a door and lets sunlight into a room that's been dim for too long. She wondered how many people like Jordan walk through crowds carrying heavy pain no one ever noticed. Talia knew that quiet sadness was the easiest kind to overlook. No crying, no calls for help. No obvious signs, just slightly red eyes, shoulders that sagged a bit, a long sigh no one paid attention to, and people carried that weight with them, day after day. While she was cleaning near the lobby entrance, she paused and thought, if she hadn't overheard that conversation this morning, if she hadn't stopped, if she had chosen to stay silent, Jordan might have spent the entire day feeling completely alone. That list might never have existed. He might not have had a reason to go back home and start over. Talia set the cloth on the table, then stood up straight, her eyes drifting toward the beach. The same spot where Jordan had stood that morning, staring into the vastness of nature while feeling completely empty. Now looking at that same place, Talia saw something else. Hope. Not just her hope or his, but the hope that sometimes a single small action can shift a person's life in a different direction. A small smile, a short question, a bit of sincere concern. Those tiny things can pull someone back from the edge and guide them toward the light. She clasped her hands gently and let out a soft sigh, one filled with relief. She told herself that if tomorrow she crossed paths with someone whose shoulders seemed too heavy, or if she noticed eyes carrying a sadness too deep to hide, she would do the same. She would ask, she would listen, she would give them a moment to know they were not invisible. Because she knew better than anyone that you don't have to be a hero to save someone. She was just a cleaning lady, an ordinary person with a simple life. But kindness given at the right moment to the right person with the right words can create a big change. When she folded the last towel, Talia looked back at the hallway where just a few hours earlier a short conversation had taken place, one that would carry a long-lasting meaning. She smiled, this time with real energy. And the story closes with 2 questions for anyone listening. Have you ever met a stranger who made your life better? If you could help someone today with just one small action, what would you choose to do? Let us know in the comments. We're always here to listen. Thank you for staying with us until the end of the story.